know PJ Campagna much longer than I do. And one thing I found out about her recently was that she moved to Nassau Bay when she was little, right?
I'm still little.
Yeah, in 1965. Is there anybody here who was in Nassau Bay before 1965? Raise your hand. Okay, so she was here when Nassau Bay was
A neighborhood and not a city.
a neighborhood, not a city. There were 6 astronauts who lived on her block, and it was just the most delightful place to get started, and she did not leave, and so many other people have not left either. So I don't want to take any of her time, but just recognize that we have an old timer here. She went to the garden club with her mother, and now she's a full-fledged member herself. So anyway, here's PJ.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So I'm young at heart, no matter how old an old-timer I get to be, and I hope I get to be a very old-timer. I'm a computer abuser as opposed to a user. I want to thank the Garden Club. This has been such a wonderful part of my life. Growing up, my mother used to drag me to the meetings, and I really enjoyed it. And it's really nice that there's so many people that are still very involved. It's a very healthy, thriving organization, and I'm proud to be a member. I've been honing my garden skills, especially since I started to create the edible landscape. My mom was a lazy gardener, and her outlook on life was, I'm gonna give it a good running start, get it in the ground, and then it better take care of itself. So I have that same theory when I can. There are a lot of things I will grow that take more effort than that, but I really do appreciate a plant that can handle it on its own. So this is the Roselle Hibiscus that you're drinking the tea from. All through the summer, I use the leaves in salad. It's got a very tangy taste, a lot like what you're drinking. And then in the fall, after it blossoms, that's when you get the calyxes to make the tea. And this is what the blossom looks like. Very delicate bloom for a hibiscus. It's only about this big around, and the bloom lasts about a day. And then that calyx, as you see, getting fatter and fatter, size by size, that's what you make the tea from, and what you can make jam from. It grows really tall, and it will fall over when it gets real tall. So we usually stake them when they're young. This is the Cranberry Hibiscus. It's also edible, also very wonderful in salads, and you can make a tea from it as well. And it is a perennial. So I'm hoping that this winter it will start its journey as a perennial. That's my front courtyard that it's growing up above the roof line. And I'm hoping that it will make it through this winter. But I've taken cuttings. Just always have to have a backup now. I learned the hard way last year. I lost way too many plants. And it has a maroon blossom. It's hard to see the blossoms coming on the Cranberry Hibiscus because it's the same color as the leaf. This is the katuk that hopefully y'all have tasted already. It is. Did y'all taste it? Great. You liked it? Yeah. Great. So there are a lot of other things that I take from the garden when I make a salad. We'll get into that more later. So when I did the presentation in the spring, I talked about how devastated my yard was from the snowpocalypse. I was shocked that my bananas came back after that hard freeze. But they sure did. This is what it looked like, I believe, probably by June. This is what it looks like again now, as tall as it was last year. So I'm very excited. We actually have taken pups from the tree, and it's such a delicious banana that I just am really glad that they came back. In fact, we're going to have to pull out pups again. That's what the fruit looks like. We got 7 bunches of bananas last year. Wow. And each bunch had somewhere between 100 and 150 bananas on each of the 7 bunches. just incredible and so delicious. It's called an ice cream banana. It tastes like vanilla ice cream. Our fig tree came back with a vengeance. We're actually going to be cutting it down. We were going to cut it down this spring, not down, not off, but just cut way back. We were going to do it in the spring, but Sean was concerned because of the snowpocalypse that it might be still in shock and he didn't want to take the risk. But this next year, we're going to cut it off about waist high. Well, waist high for a normal person. And that way it's going to branch out wider than it, because it's going to get tall every year anyway. But I want to be able to harvest the fruit easier. And it's a delicious purple fig, just delicious. So I will have cuttings of the figs, and it's a good thing. If you guys want more for your garden, just let me know. I'm happy to help out. We air layered 7 of the fig branches last year, and they sold in less than 48 hours. So everybody has to have an obsession in life. I think I found mine finally. It's called the Brazilian grape tree, the Java Tacava. I now have 13 varieties of Java Tacavas. There are lots of different cultivars and over 30 specimens. So we're going to go through and I'm going to show you what the Javos look like. I'm a Java Tacava-holic, and I've joined Java Tacava-holic Anonymous. It's an obsession. It's in the crepe myrtle family. So you know how beautifully the bark peels? These peel. And they won't flower and fruit until they peel. So these are not my trees. This is the flowering on the trunk of the tree. It looks like snow when it's in full bloom. Just absolutely gorgeous. This is fruit that's developing on the trunk. And here's a mature tree with lots of fruit ready to eat.
Now what does that taste like?
It's like a grape, but with undertones and overtones of different flavors depending upon the cultivar.
Like what?
Like some have a peachy taste, and some have an apricot taste, and some have more of a mango taste. And it's just, the varieties are not endless, but there's a lot of variety. And it comes from Brazil, but there are people growing in Puerto Rico and in Argentina and in Peru. And I just learned about a Peruvian cultivar that will take more cold. So I'm going to be buying another one, and then another one, and Sean is probably going to divorce me. But I'll miss it. It'll be okay. So this is my oldest Java Tacava. It's the Sabra, which is the first cultivar that came to America from Brazil, from a collector that brought it home. And the way it's been described to me is Sabra is the wolf, and all the other cultivars are domesticated dogs. So what happens is they use the Sabra as rootstock, and then they'll put one that maybe doesn't have as much cold hardiness for the roots, but will fruit in 3 to 4 years instead of 10 to 20, which you might wait, and I hope I'm alive when my Sabra finally fruits. Yeah. And the rest of mine are very young trees, very young. But my Sabra is growing and growing, and it totally peeled this year, all the way up. And it's about 74 inches high, and about over 2 inches wide at the base of the tree. So these trees can live in a container their entire lives. Angela and I went over to John Panzarella's backyard, and we got to taste a red, which the red will fruit in somewhere between 3 to 5 years. It's a hybrid. And then there's a hybrid of the red hybrid called the scarlet. And the scarlet can also flower and fruit very young. So I have 2 reds and 3 scarlets, and so I can afford to wait for the Sabra if I can taste the fruit of the other ones. So here's my first red that I bought. This is a 2-year-old tree. So as you can see, you can bonsai it. Any of you guys do bonsai? Say, the Java Tacava is an excellent tree to do bonsai with. Bought a second one a month later, because the lady, the buyer backed out on that one, so she sold it to me, so I got the second one. This is what they looked like in the spring this year, and this is what they're looking like now. Very fast growing. And just about to start to peel. This is the scarlet this spring. This is the scarlet now.
Wow.
How tall do they get? It really depends. In Brazil, they'll get to be 40 feet tall, but they're not gonna get that tall here.
Not if you can help it.
Well, and they can live in a pot their whole life. If you keep it in a pot and prune it back, it's not gonna get 40, even 20 feet tall. This is the ESLAQ. It was in the fall when I got it. This is the picture of it in the spring, and this is what it looks like now. This is a Coronata Restinga when I bought it. These were 6-month-old seedlings when I bought them. This is in the spring, and this is now. The guy I bought these from was so generous that there were 2 seedlings in the same pot, and he didn't separate them. He sold it to me with them together. So I have 2 Coronatas. And if you start to look closely, you'll see a difference in the leaf shape, whether it's wavy or whether it's ribbed or how it starts. When the new leaves come out, they come out different colors. This is a Grimmel. Adolf Grimmel was a collector of rare tropical fruits and had a place in Florida, I think the Upper Keys, and he put together a fruit park, basically. They named this cultivar for him, and so I've got several Grimmels. That's this week. Another one this week. I think I have 5 total. Then I found out about these Peruvian plants that are going to be able to tolerate more cold. Yeah, I'm looking for something that can tolerate more cold. So this is the Black Pearl. It's a hybrid. That's when I got it, and I got them in June. And this is it today. Well, 2 days ago. This is the Campo Ramon. It can go down to like 21 degrees and not die. Loving that idea. And this is it this week. They're growing really well. And I'm giving it all the love and affection I can when they're young. Because in another year, I'm going to be able to ignore them and they're going to do just fine. This is the INTA. It is a university in Brazil. Really growing quickly. This is they call this the giant leaf. It's a hybrid Vitrantha, which means it's gonna fruit white fruit. And Otto Anderson was another big collector, and it's named for Otto. This is it this week. This is an Obera, again one that can take 20, 21 degrees.
Now, what are we gonna do with those? We eat those, or do we brew them?
Eventually, they're going to bear fruit, and once they get in gear, some of these trees will bear fruit 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. So it's going to be a constant. You can make wine with it, you can make jellies, jams, ice creams. There are a lot of different things that they do with the fruit. This is a Rivoleris. Again, it'll take a lot of cold, and that's this week. This is a white, and that's my Jabo collection. Yay. There's another genus, I guess they're called. The genus is a Eugenia. There are literally thousands of Eugenias, different types of Eugenias. I'm not collecting Eugenias, but I do have a few, and I'm hoping they fruit very young. So I'm very excited to see what happens there. This is a red Surinam Cherry, sometimes called a Campagna. So this was it was gifted to me at about 6 months old. It was about that tall. So this is the 2nd year, and this is now. That's how big the red one was. I didn't have a baby picture from the red Surinam. This is a black Surinam. This is in the spring this year, and this is now. This is a Pitanga tuba. It's a type of eugenia. It's sometimes called the star cherry because it's ribbed with 7 ribs, so it looks like a star when you cut it. That was 6 months old. This was in the spring. This is seeds that I bought and started, so the seeds are about 10 months old now. Now, those of you that saw the springtime presentation, this is my Patamba, the most expensive tree I've ever purchased, even more expensive than the macadamia nut that froze to death in my front yard. It tastes like an apricot mixed with mango and pineapple. It's the size of a cherry. It's kind of fuzzy like an apricot. And Sean claims it's the most delicious piece of fruit he's ever had. So it is fruiting. It fruits between May and July. And this year we got about 20 pieces of fruit, which I was very happy to get after the snowpocalypse. Last year we got about 30 pieces of fruit. So I started growing it from the seeds, and we have some beautiful seeds. It's getting bigger and it's getting healthier, and I intend to get a lot from it over the years. This is my seeds coming up, my Patamba seeds, and what they look like now. Then I found another eugenia, it's called the Rainforest Plum, and I bought some seeds. So these are the seedlings at about a month old. And this is 10 months. And this is about 14 months. I grow a lot of unusual plants. And I like to grow things that are beautiful and feed me. I'm not gonna grow regular green beans, because when green beans are on sale at the grocery store, you just go and buy them. Why put all that work into something that's easy to get? So I grow the things that are hard to find, or if you do find them in the store, they're ridiculously priced. Like fennel. I love fennel. But I will not pay $4 for a stalk of fennel. I just won't do it. It's ridiculous. Now, I talked about green beans. There's an Italian flat green bean, a Romano bean, that is absolutely delicious. I will do that season after season. I will go through the work for them. They taste nutty and I just steam them, put a little bit of butter on them. They're great in stews, and I love this green bean, so I'm always going to grow it. Always going to grow it. I don't care what anybody tells you. I think tomatoes are incredibly difficult to grow. But I have found a tomato that's a very small cherry tomato from the Everglades of Florida. It grows wild in the Everglades, and it is absolutely delicious, and it loves the heat. So I have Everglades tomatoes forming on my plants right now that have lived through the whole summer. Okay, so this is a hummingbird tree. It's a Sabacea something or other. And that was, I don't know how old it was a gift. 2 years ago, June. This is what the flower looks like. The flowers are edible. And there's a white one too. There's a red and a white. This is what it looked like last month. And again, I always do a backup. It doesn't want to freeze, this tree. So I've taken cuttings, and where I cut, there's new branches growing already on the mother tree. And I tugged at them yesterday, and they're making roots. So I've got my backup just in case. This is an ice cream bean tree. It's called an Inga, and there are different varieties of Ingas. It's a really unusual leaf. There's in between each row of leaves, there's a leaf on the stem. It's just I've never seen a plant that grows like this. Again, it doesn't like the cold, but it was in the greenhouse last winter, and it came back. So this is what it looks like 3-4 months ago. This is what the fruit looks like. Inside the pod are the seeds, and around the seeds is a fluffy, it looks and kind of even feels like cotton candy. And it's sweet to the taste. It's a legume. It's a chop and drop for your garden, so it'll fix nitrogen for your other plants. So even if we never can get fruit because it keeps freezing back and has to start again in spring, then you've got the ability to feed your other trees with it. And it will grow to be 40 feet tall. So it's not gonna fit in the greenhouse in 2 years. It'll be too tall. So we'll chop it back, and hopefully it won't die back. But I think maybe it's just deciduous and it drops its leaves anyway. So I bought this fruit that I showed you, because I started growing that one because it was a present from another grower, but I hadn't tasted it. So I really didn't know how much time and energy I wanted to invest in it until I tasted the fruit and made sure I liked it. Oh my gosh, it's delicious. So the first piece of fruit I put in my mouth to taste, when I took it, when I peeled it away from the seed was already rooting. Yeah, they want to grow. So I have like 20 of these now that are like this tall now. So this is that first one that I ate. I put it in the ground the next morning. And the rest of them aren't quite so big as that one. This is what the flower coast of Brazil. So if I can find one to buy, I'm gonna buy as many seeds as they'll sell me and hope that it will grow, and then use it as the rootstock and maybe graft some of my originals to it. Not sure. But it grows the short, fat pods as well. Some of the varieties of ice cream bean trees have pods that are this long and skinny. Here are my Everglades tomatoes in full tilt this summer. This picture was taken probably in July. Anybody else in this room have tomatoes that actually will give you fruit in July? Just doesn't exist. So I have seeds for y'all. They're little bitty tomatoes and they make lots of seeds. And they're just delicious. Very sweet, yummy. Any of you that have walked or driven past my house have seen my persimmon tree. It's the only tree left in the front yard. I've got the timber bamboo, it didn't die, it came back. But this is the only tree in the yard that survived last winter. Now we have planted a moringa tree in the yard, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. Oh, there it is, the moringa tree. Ask and you shall receive. Okay, so this is the moringa still flowering like 2 days ago. When the flowers turn into long seed pods, they call them drumsticks. This is the tree of life. Everything about the moringa tree is edible. So you can eat the leaves, you can eat the branches, you can eat the bark. The seeds, once they're dried, will purify water. So I found an article a couple weeks ago about getting heavy metals out of the water, and I called the parks control officer, or whatever his title is, in Flint, Michigan, and asked him if he knew about the moringa. So he's now researching it, and he has got my number, so that if he thinks he wants to grow moringa to purify their water, because the city pipes are all fixed now, thank God. But the individual homeowners have to fix their pipes. So if that's too expensive for them to do, at least they can purify their water and then drink it safely.
Where does that grow? What's it native to?
I don't know, but they're growing it all over the world now. It's in the Middle East, it's in Asia.
I think they talked to us about that in Africa. It's the only reason that I...
Absolutely, because people who don't have clean water need this tree. And they need, and moringa is one of the few grains that has protein. So it's got all these different advantages. It is a superfood, big time. And you whack it back and it grows. See how there's a Y at the bottom of that tree? The first year, and in July, it was so heavy, the pot was falling over. So I whacked it. and took the top of the tree and just stuck it in some dirt. And it was my second tree.
That's a gift.
I mean, no fertilization, no nothing. It doesn't need it. It does it all by itself. If you'll see moringa powders in supplement stores and stuff, it's great for you. So it's one of those things that I go out and I pick and put in the salad every night. Has a finish that's kind of peppery, not spicy pepper, just like black pepper. So John Panzarella, who spoke to the group a while back, right? He went to Italy and brought back seeds for a loquat. Now, we have lots of loquats all over Nassau Bay, Clear Lake City, whatever, and nobody ever eats the fruit. Because the cultivar that they've pushed as landscaping doesn't taste as good. This Genoa loquat makes fruit this big.
Really?
And is sweet and delicious. So I bought a seedling from John in October, so almost a year ago, and it was this tall when I bought it, and it's now way over this fence.
Wow.
So another year, maybe two, I'll be getting fruit from my loquat tree. We grow papaya in pots. Of course, it has a taproot, and they grew through the bottom of the pot, so now I can't move my papayas. But they've done lots of fruit on them. They're not starting to ripen yet. I hope they survive the winter and we'll have spring fruit if they don't start to change color right away. But you can do papaya like a vegetable instead of as a fruit and eat it green. It's a meat tenderizer as well when you eat it green.
Really?
So I got pineapples from Hawaii, which was not an easy or cheap thing to do. These are the Hilo White.
But was it legal?
Yes.
Or would it be
Yes.
illegal?
Absolutely legal. I don't grow anything that's illegal, honey.
I love it. Maybe you should.
Well, once they legalize it, maybe I will. But this is when I bought them, and I paid for the biggest box that he could ship with. So I got a total of 31 crowns, or whatever they're called, slips, or whatever. And this is what they look like now. Takes about 3 years, only about 2 years in Hawaii, but they have a lot different environment than we have, right? And they don't like to be wet all the time. So the bigger challenge with pineapple is not letting them get too wet. Whereas their challenge is, can we get enough water for them to grow? So they're doing really well. I talked about yacon in the springtime, the Bolivian earth apple that's a perennial tuber, like a potato. It produces inulin when you eat it, not insulin. So even diabetics can eat this vegetable. And it is absolutely sweet. It has lots of water content to it. Totally delicious. I bought one plant. In the fall, when I harvested, I didn't get a big harvest the first year, but one plant turned into 7. And the next year, 7 plants turned into 51, and then we were ready to move it back into the house after the remodeling was mostly done, and it's never going to get done anyway. It's absolutely delicious, and we actually had some survive the snowpocalypse, so I have like a dozen pots. It's easy to harvest when you grow it in pots. You just put down a tarp, dump the pot over, and then separate out the tubers, the propagation tubers from the tubers you eat, and then you're good to go. This last year when he harvested in the early spring, before the snowpocalypse, we had a bunch of vegetable, and he made syrup with it, and we didn't get to eat any of the vegetables. It took all he made syrup with, and we got like 1 pint of syrup. We're not doing syrup again because I like the veggie too much. Yeah, that's how much our harvest was last year.
Where's that one?
I'm growing Black Beauty eggplant, and we just had our first, and eggplant's a real heat lover, but I put them in the ground too late this year, so I've still got a lot of flowers and baby eggplant. So there's baby eggplant up at the top of the picture and one off to the side that you can't see. This is a shisho, which is also a good salad green. That's when I first got it, so that was spring 2 years ago, or June 2 years ago. This is what it looks like now. So I'm ready to start comfortably harvesting for food, and maybe doing some divide and conquer or cuttings. I'm not sure which, I'm not sure what to do with it next, so I'm learning as I go. You know, I am honing my gardening skills. I'm using the method of trial and error. So this is a Corno di Toro bell pepper. It's a sweet pepper. I don't have good luck with bells, so I'm having good luck with the cornos. And I also do the yellow as well as the red. This is a blackberry jam fruit tree. And it's about 6 months old in that picture. This is what they look like now. I have 3 of them. And I have a peanut butter fruit tree to go along with it so I can have my peanut butter and jelly. I told y'all about my Crinum Lilies in the spring. This is one of the few things that I grow that is not edible. And I love this plant. It is totally carefree. It can handle drought. It can handle drowning. It can handle the freeze. It was amazing. It lost every single leaf in the snowpocalypse. And before it put a single leaf back on, it bloomed.
How much does that one cost?
A boatload of money. And you're gonna thank me for it if you buy one. I have never seen this plant in a nursery, ever. It's a giant purple crinum lily. There are different colors of crinums, and there are different colors of giant crinums. This one is apparently native to Madagascar. And I was gifted this as a wedding present. That is 3 days ago.
Wow.
This was yesterday. Isn't it lovely? I don't do anything to this plant. I don't fertilize it, I don't water it, I ignore it, and it thrives.
How much did you say it cost?
Does it matter now?
Probably not.
Okay, so this is a Ceylon Gooseberry. Haven't tasted it yet, mine hasn't given fruit, but that's what it looks like now. It's growing like a weed. And it has thorns, so it's one of the few things that I will tolerate. I didn't realize it was going to get thorns until I looked at it a couple weeks ago. So it may not last long in my garden, I don't know. But I do grow the finger limes, the Australian finger limes. This is a guava that I learned about called mountain guava. It can go down, or 20 degrees, -6 or 7, whatever that is in Celsius. So I was gifted seeds. Growers are really generous people. If you want to buy a little, I'm going to give you a little, and that's what they all do. So I bought some things, and then I was gifted these, and this is what they look like about 2 months ago. So they're growing really well. I grow coral vine that I was given by one of my high school girlfriends, and also a Clear Creeker, and it's a beautiful bee attractor. I had 4 different types of bees on this bush last year. But y'all saw my tree that came down, right? My last oak tree from my front yard. Did you see the pictures? In the hurricane, hit the neighbors' cars and messed up the cars. But if it had gone further, another 15 degrees, it would have gotten their roof. And if it would have gone another 40 degrees, it would have gotten my roof. So at least it just fell and hurt cars. And they're all insured anyway, so who cares? But it was a big hassle. Anyway, no pictures of the tree. But the beehive was in that tree. So I haven't seen bees on this bush this year. Since the hurricane. So what's new in my garden? This is a Superior Lemon Drop Mangosteen. This is a Chico Sapote. This is a wax jambu, sometimes called a rose apple. And I have one mountain apple. So I lost both my lychee trees in the snowpocalypse. And then in July, Sean went to the Hong Kong market and bought lychee for us to eat. So I said, screw it, I'm going to see if I can grow it. So I now have 20 baby lychee trees. And of course I don't need 20, but I planted them all just to see what would happen. So I planted 25 seeds, and I think that 23 of them grew. And this is what they look like now. I'm growing-
I love leche, but I don't know a thing about it, and every time I've gone to the market, they didn't have it.
It's very seasonal. And, you know, I mean, there's only a very short window.
Is that a plant or a big
June and
tree?
July here is when you'll see them in the markets. I'm growing kiwi now, which is going to be a huge vine, take about 5 years before it starts to give you fruit. It takes a male to pollinate the females. These are seedlings grown from the grocery store, the gold zestfree, which is a delicious, kind of a berry taste to it, really good. So we're gonna see, it's all an experiment anyway. This is water spinach. Bought the spinach at the Asian grocery store and then planted it. And it can live in the water. So I have this beautiful fountain that I made in ceramics class, and I've got the pond base to put it in and blah, blah, blah. But now I have to worry about keeping those wet until Sean sets up the fountain. So, grow beautiful things that will feed you. And I hope I've given you some food for thought. Thanks a lot. And if y'all have any questions, ask away. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes?
When you do your cuttings, what do you do with the cuttings to get them to read?
It all depends upon what the plant is. I mean, it really does. Some cuttings, like the fig, and the moringa, I just whacked it off and put it in some dirt. Usually, I will use rooting hormone, and I use the powdered one. I do that when I air layer. I do that when I take a cutting. I'll kind of strip off some of the bark so the cambium is exposed, and then dip it and put it into a starter cup. Some things I start in water, like basil cuttings will start in water. Depends upon what it is.
How can you just poke spinach that you buy at the store in the ground and it grows?
Spinach?
Isn't that what you just
The
said?
water.
No, I grow a lot of things that are called spinach that are not a true spinach.
Okay.
I grow water spinach, I grow Egyptian spinach, I grow Malabar spinach, I grow Okinawan spinach, and I grow longevity spinach. And now the water spinach. So,
Because mine makes compost when I do that.
I can appreciate that. I don't grow regular spinach. It's a fall crop at the very best. But I do grow a lot of fall vegetables. I mean, my fall garden's probably as successful, if not more successful, than my spring and summer. Like my Everglades are gonna be giving me more tomatoes. I've started some kale, I've started Brussels sprouts and Swiss chard and rutabaga and beets. Not that I'm gonna be successful with it, mind you, but I'm gonna try and see what happens. Because any success is better than not trying. So, try it. It might work for you. If you need guidance, I don't know how much help I'll be, but you're always welcome to call me. Another question? Yes, sir.
Do you ever give a tour?
I will.
How would we find out about it?
Call me. And if it's a day that I'm clear, I'm happy to give a tour of my edible
What's your
landscape.
last
Absolutely.
name? PJ, what's your last name?
Campagna. I live on Point Lookout. Right across the street from the freshwater lake. I'm not on the lake side, I'm across the street. I'm the white brick house with the white metal roof and the solar panels. You can't miss me.
Parla italiano também.
No.
Oh,
I don't even speak English well.
All right.
Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.